Welcome back to the Driven Leadership Podcast. My name is Austin, not Connor, who is normally introducing this, but Connor is here.
I'm still here.
We're switching it up a little bit, just a little bit. But Eric is here, Connor's here, I am here, and we're talking about leading up. The interesting part about in an organization and leadership is you have multiple different tiers. And when we say the word leadership, often we're thinking about how we're leading our teams and influencing the teams underneath us. But the interesting thing is a lot of times in middle management, unless you're the CEO or the owner of the company, you have multiple different hats when it comes to leadership and also followership. And so I found, talking with many leaders over the years, the challenge of leading up, leading down, leading around. And this may sound familiar. This is John Maxwell's wrote an entire book on this called The 360-Degree Leader. But we thought, and this is kind of how we'll kick it off. What are the essentials or the essential challenges specifically when it comes to leading up that you both have experienced, whether with other leaders or yourself?
You want to go first, Connor?
Yeah, I mean, I think off the bat, a lot of people think it's bullshit. Like, whenever you say that of like, oh, I have to lead from behind or I have to lead up, they're like, that's just not something I can do because their view of the leadership that's above them. So that's always like a big challenge is we're like, well, yeah, I'd love to lead up, but there's no clear perspective or view of what that really healthily looks like for it to actually be productive. And I think I've also heard a lot of people ask, like, what's the goal there in doing that? I get my objectives from the top. I then give them to the team that's below me. So what's the objective? Why do I need to worry about doing that? I just need to worry about doing my job, which is leading those below me. So that's always the first kind of instinct whenever I've talked to people or heard it being talked about amongst a middle management team.
Gosh, I don't figure out how to say this, but here's what I was feeling as you were saying that is what a giant load of bullshit. Okay, that not directed at you, but directed at that mentality. What's the point?
Yeah.
Because,
oh no, yeah, 100%.
And I'm not saying that isn't real because that is what people feel and that is where they go. And if you're listening to this, I'm not looking to punch you in the face with it. I'm just simply going. That's a view coming probably from frustration and a lack of results. And so therefore they've given up on it instead of acknowledging there's massive value if we can have this relationship managing up that produces fruit. That's really good.
Yeah.
The reality though, it's hard. It is a really hard relationship, especially if you don't have somebody who's collaborative or wants to be kind of led up or, and then you get into how emotionally aware are they? Do they look at you as a subordinate or do they look at you as a person who's doing a role who they also work with? Like, are they coaching you? Are they directing you? Like, there's all those things. But if you go general, I think it fits exactly what you just said, Connor, is that people are not really that excited about managing up. And when they have to, they're kind of shut down about it, frustrated, and want to blame up or somewhere as to what's going on. And so my first instinct around this, if we're going to have a healthy relationship managing up, it's got to be built on trust. And people go, well, what if I just can't build trust with them? You can do what you can do. Okay, there are certain limitations that go on, but there's some base level things that most people aren't doing. And your ability to manage up and have these hard conversations with somebody that may not be as easy to work with will, as you get better at it, directly reflect on how you manage down and how you manage across and even manage yourself. So let's say I've got one of those tough cases. I've got a manager who's more directive. They're not very open or interested in collaborating or my ideas. When we talk, they're directive or they're just giving feedback as to what I screwed up or something along those lines. And I'm feeling a little bitter. Like, let's say all those things are going on, right? And if I'm in that space, then I've got a couple options. I got to make a decision. Am I going to make this better or am I going to sit in this or am I going to leave? Okay. That is a first question mark.
Yeah.
Okay.
Finite options.
Okay. So if this is for the people out there that go, I want to figure out how to make this better. The ones that want to sit in this, what you're going to do is become more and more disengaged, disenchanted. You will shut down. Over time, you will be absolutely miserable. And you're hoping either they get moved out or eventually you quit or get fired. That's where it goes.
And it's easy to view yourself as the victim in those kind of spaces where it's like, oh, I can't do anything.
Well, I would say that's another one of the challenges, right? So we either don't believe it's possible to influence others. We don't have the psychological safety in the environment, and the culture is not built for it, right? Which is kind of what we're alluding to. And then the third is we view ourselves in a way that doesn't focus on the things that we can control, and therefore we're giving away our ability to control to someone else. Before we go forward, though, I want to go backwards in order to go forwards, because we're throwing around some words here. We've thrown around lead up, and we've thrown around manage up. We're talking about, just in general, how do we define that? And what do we define just to make sure that we are thinking the same way? Because in this, there's so many different routes someone's mind, depending on what part of the organization you're in. There's a lot of levels of leading up, or there's a lot of levels. So how do you define leading up?
Being able to provide a productive, healthy relationship and environment between you and anyone in a role that has more authority, direction within an organization. So that could be managing up with
exactly
the CEO.
What I was going to say.
That was?
Eric cut me off. I think that got edited out. Whoever edits these, but he cut me off. So that's. I mean, I don't know. That's exactly what I was going to say. I think it's pretty succinct.
What were you going to say, man?
No, I didn't have anything to say.
And so I'm just jovially saying that your definition was spot on.
Yeah, I'm piggybacking to say that I would have also said those exact things if Eric wasn't here.
Yeah, got it. I think he's being sarcastic.
He is. Yeah.
So with that, I am using synonymously manage up and lead up. I'm switching those out. I'm sure there's a difference. I'm not putting much thought into the difference between the two, but I'm talking about influencing, which comes down to leadership, influencing the relationship between me and someone above me hierarchically in an organization.
And I did throw it out, but I think it is different. We're not talking about servant leadership leading from behind. That is a different concept. We're talking about leading up vertically in a hierarchical structure of management or leadership.
Yeah, I think both those distinctions are good. So what we're talking about today, if you are a manager that is not the CEO, the top of the organization, the owner or founder, you have a responsibility to influence those who lead you to some degree.
Yeah.
There is a component of leadership that is also influencing those above you. And I like the distinction, Connor, of not servant leadership. So in order to go forward now, we say, how do you influence those who lead you well? Because I think, to your point, Eric, and where you were going before we started going backwards to go forwards, was when conflict arises, I think you see the dynamics of the relationship, whether you're able to do that or not able to do that. And I believe, what does Gallup's work say, but also just the homage of time, people don't leave companies, they leave managers, they leave people, they leave leaders. And so this is crucial on how to influence above, but also how to accept. And so I just caveat too, if you're in a leadership role, CEO, owner, and you're listening to this isn't just not for you, right? You have to be willing to accept that influence that's coming up from below and also not shut it down in essence as well. So I think there's a double-edged sword here that we're talking about.
I love that you said that. I'd even say let it happen. Be excited for it to happen. I was having a conversation. This was a day or two ago with a gentleman that runs a company, and he has an employee that's not. They feel like they're not doing a good job in the company, and they went to them.
Sorry,
and
the employee feels like they're not doing well, or
no. The manager doesn't feel like the employee's doing a great job, right? Sure. The manager is the owner. Okay, same thing. Okay, they feel like they're not doing a great job. The employee, they came at them fairly directive, kind of like, hey, you're not doing a good job. They didn't handle that very well. The employee didn't quit. the employee didn't just put their head down and then just go off and maybe do something for a little while or whatever.
Mhm.
They responded. Now, they didn't respond in the most healthy way, but they responded with, you're not seeing the whole picture. You're not in my shoes. You're not asking questions. And if you
Sure.
did, we might get somewhere. Okay.
Whoa.
And so the owner's talking to me and going, should I fire him? Right.
Okay.
And so, and my response to that was, there may be a promotion sitting in here, but I definitely wouldn't fire him. Now, I don't have all the back history. Maybe there's a whole lot more that's going on here.
Sure.
But I want people, because they didn't come back and say, how dare you, you a-hole, all this stuff. They came back and I said, hey, there's more here, and let's get to a place. That's a generally healthy response when you've got an owner coming down on it. So the owner's got to be open to going, I want people to push back. I want to hear the feedback. Sometimes there's emotion attached to it, but we've got to work through that. But anyway, going back to, we're talking about leadership and influence, and it goes in the same formula, whether we're going up, going down, we're going sideways, where we're going. A personal relationship is that, in my opinion, if we're going to do this well, we've got to get on the same page. We've got to speak a similar language. And if my manager doesn't know how to do that, then I need to influence that happening. And so if I'm working for a manager that, man, we don't have that connection, I need this to work differently. I need the instructions to come down differently. I need to talk about things differently. I need to be willing to have that conversation. And internally, I've got to have the decision. I'm either going to have a healthy relationship, or potentially I'm going to look for a different option. I'm not telling you to quit your job, but I'm going, we get what we tolerate. People are like, yeah, I tolerate my manager. And you're just saying, just go. I'm not saying be rude to him. What I am saying is go, hey, Connor, if you're my manager, I'm going, can we have a conversation? I want to talk about how we can work better together. And I want to understand your agenda and your directives and what you see in my role. And what are anybody that's been in this role before, what did they do to be successful? What did you like? What really made it work? What didn't make it work? What are the pitfalls of people that you manage and work with working with you? Yeah. Like, I'm in it. Like, I want to know. I'm doing an interview with them. I'm going, teach me about you. How do you function? How do you work? So I can fit in this environment or not fit in this environment, but at least make decisions. And what most people do is they have a manager and the situation, they don't have that conversation. They don't get in there. And by the way, that conversation is going to build trust. You know, and it's not, I'm not saying to Connor, I'm not going, hey, you suck at managing, and so what do you want from me? I'm not coming there. I'm going, hey, teach me about you. Teach me how to do this better, because I want to be, if you've got 10 direct reports, I want to outperform all of them. I want to crush it, because in a positive way, I want your job.
Yeah. And what I really like about this is that, because what you're saying, I have specifically done like in a job interview where it's like, hey, tell me what success looks like in this job. Tell me what blah, blah, blah. And then you start say you get the position, you start the position, and then that line of questioning goes away, and everything that happens, you just assume there's assumptions made that that's the way it has to be. So my manager did XYZ. There is an assumption made on my part that they are just intentionally making those dumb choices, and I just have to follow them, and I have to do them. And if I think differently, I can't say them. And so I love kind of like the responsibility that there is some amount of responsibility on the mid-level manager to say, I should never stop asking questions. I should always keep asking, how can this be done better, and challenge those own assumptions that are happening, because they're day to day, because directives and decisions come down day to day. So I really like that mindset.
What always blows me away, it's like, I want to know how to do my job better. Everybody does. We all want to perform well, right? And if I feel like the relationship's not there, or I'm underperforming, or maybe I'm missing the mark from what they want, then we don't go ask, because we're afraid of what is the outcome going to be. We're afraid of that conversation. Yeah. And the reality is, if you flip it and you are the manager and you've got somebody working for you and they're missing the mark, and they go, hey, can we have a meeting? And they sit down in that meeting and they go, I want to perform. I want to do better. I feel like I'm missing the mark. How can I do this better? What do you want from me? how excited would you be?
Yeah.
I mean, I would be ecstatic. However, I think one of the barriers that we just talked about, right? And that's kind of why we started with challenges. One of the challenges that we face in that is I've done that before, Eric, and they didn't respond. They didn't do anything. They told me what I could do, but and I did that, and it didn't bring anything different. It didn't bring change. It didn't bring result. It didn't do anything. And I want to speak directly to that person for a second that has done this many times and may say, hey, it hasn't done anything, and that's why I'm frustrated, and that's why I've stopped leading up or attempting to influence.
Well, but okay, so let's turn this into instead of leading up, just any relationship. Okay. So my wife, Mary asked me, which if you've taken our conflict class, I talk about this. Okay. Mary started our relationship with, if I cook dinner, meaning Mary, then I do the dishes, meaning Eric. Okay. That's the way it works. Okay. And if the sink is full, it's a bad day. All right. Well, that wasn't my habit. I wasn't used to it. She talked to me about it. I was screwing it up. So Mary didn't stop dating me in the beginning because I kept screwing it up. She came back and she goes, hey, what's happening here? We talked about this, blah, blah, blah. So I go back to the manager situation, right? Okay. First time you go in there, you're talking about it. You're having a conversation. We got a clear directive walking out. We feel like there's something that came out of that. If we don't feel like something came out of it, then we need to be talking about that.
Yeah.
We need to be going, okay, in the meeting going, okay, I'm feeling like whatever you're feeling. I feel like as we're doing this, I feel like you're, I don't know, I'm not being heard or whatever. We got to talk about the real issues. Okay. And if those things are going on, we got to talk about them. But then we walk out, we're in a good space. We walk out to go kill it. We think we're killing it. And then we're not getting a response. I'm sitting back down with them. Right. I sit down and go, hey, noticing this, I'm doing my best with this, but I'm feeling like I'm still missing the mark or something's off or am I missing it? And here's the reason. These 3 things you said, or these 3 things that happened, this is what I noticed. So I get some managers do not know how to deal with those type of situations. And we're interpreting what's going on when it may be something completely different. It may be they're a really bad communicator. It's possible. And we've got to force the communication, but it still falls. I am responsible. You know, people go, I'll go back to marriage. People go, marriage is 50-50, right? It's 50% my job to make it awesome. It's 50% your job to make it awesome. That is complete bullshit. It is 100% my responsibility and it's 100% yours. That's every relationship.
Mm-hmm.
If I want a great relationship, it is 100% my responsibility to do it. And I know people are sitting out there going, man, I'm giving it 100% and I'm doing everything I can and it's still not getting there. So it's either you ask for help, you increase your skills, you pull in a mentor, you go past them and go to the boss above them, or you find a different job. I mean, those are options. What I won't do, and it's easy, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm sitting on the side. I don't generally have a boss. I get that. But I see it over and over again. The employee that sets a boundary, and I don't mean they're setting boundaries just to set boundaries. It's like, you know, the relationship isn't good. I put in a lot of work on it. I'm working towards it. We're not getting there. It's okay to go, hey, Connor's my boss going, hey, I feel like we're not getting there. Can we pull in Jimmy, the boss above us? Can we pull them in and let's talk? I don't want to go around you. I want to do this with you. I want to figure this out. And if they're like, no, you can't go around me and it's not getting figured out, you either go around them or you quit. I mean, it's that, but we got to set boundaries for ourselves. We got to have relationships that matter and that work. And most people are not, statistics show most people are not blessed with a great manager. So you kind of got to manage them in a way. You've got to be the great manager. You've got to be the one that handles great conflict. You've got to be the emotionally intelligent. I know that's not fair, but and the reality is you do all that stuff, whether or not you get the promotion in that company or not. Mm-hmm. All those skills will set you up to be the best vice president, president, whatever you want to be, because you're going to be able to run the company. But
so I hear building trust. And Connor, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I know we had a conversation the other day on the idea of like vulnerability-based trust versus predictive-based trust. Mm-hmm. And I think like when you have been in those positions of leading or influencing those above you, what are some things you've done to increase trust, maybe when it's been frustrating? I know you've been in some good leadership, under some good leadership, I know you've also been in some challenging leadership, including myself in that. So what does that look like for you?
Well, I would mostly include the tech company that fired me many moons ago. But no, I think in regards, because we've been talking about what can the mid-level manager do. I was lucky enough to have this example for me in one of my first jobs at Chick-fil-A, where the trust came from above, where those comments and those things were encouraged and I was brought to the table. I was not bringing them to the table. And so there was a learned behavior. This conversation is one of the more binary ones we've had, where it's what can the mid-level manager do? What can the top level manager do? And for the top level manager, it is fully about just giving opportunity for these conversations to invite the trust. But what we're saying is that the mid level manager is also responsible for that. Where if you are yearning for that and you need that, then you bring them to the table. So, but I mean, what Eric's saying, it sounds great in the vacuum of a podcast, but it is very much the reality. And I've lived both sides of that reality where I was leading up, it was not being reciprocated, and I left that job. Now, the tech company was unintentional, but it was the same. It was the same. Like they severed the connection, but it was coming because I was pushing up from where I was, and it just wasn't working. It wasn't jiving. Yeah. And so I'm struggling sitting here because this is one of the more, like I said, black and white things that we've talked about, where if you're in a position where you're frustrated because you aren't able to lead up. I mean, Mary talks about all the time, the law of the lid. Like there is a breaking point. The breaking point is you not being in that position anymore. And so that's kind of my view on it from both sides, from the mid-level and then from the top level.
So we've gotten trust there, and I guess one of the big things I want to say is the vulnerability-based trust. I know you do that naturally, Connor, Eric. And when I say vulnerability-based trust versus predictive-based trust, it's this concept that I have to lead with my vulnerability in mind, and that's a huge way of influencing those, in trusting that it's not going to be weaponized. And that takes us out of that victimhood mentality and go, hey, I'm gonna put all the cards there. That's what you're saying there. Instead of I'm only going to share what I can predictably outcome the results.
Yeah.
I'm only going to share what I can manipulate. And just caveat here, we're not talking about manipulation. I'm not influencing you for a promotion. I'm not managing you up so I can take your job alone. I'm doing this so we can all win, because when we all win, everyone succeeds. And so insecurity comes in, and that's why we don't lead well down and we don't invite this up. And it's this weird boat that we kind of get it. And so it takes being vulnerable, being honest, and that manager that's sitting across from the leader going, hey, I hear that. I hear you. I'm with you. As well as the person saying what they're saying too. Eric, what you got?
Well, I was just thinking, as we're saying this, and this is leading down, but somebody comes in, I should be having these conversations. Actually, you guys got in a couple months ago. I don't know if we specifically did this conversation where it's like, here's where I've had successful people working with you. We figured that out over time, but what a cool conversation. I would love that conversation. I'm starting as an employee. Here's what I know works. Here's what doesn't work. But it's coming, like you're saying, it's coming from a vulnerable place of going, hey, I'm not perfect up here. And I'm looking for a relationship with somebody that I work with that's going to push back. That doesn't mean giving away. That doesn't mean you stop making decisions. That doesn't mean you're not still responsible for what you're responsible for and you got to move the needle forward. But it does mean that I'm willing. I think this really comes down to when people aren't willing. I'm in a management role and I'm not willing to hear and listen. And a lot of times managers just don't have time. And so it's short. They're not paying attention. They're looking at their computer while somebody's sitting across from their desk. They're on a phone call, but they're typing while they're doing. I mean, there's all these things that are going on. We're distracted. So it's just have a sit down, face to face, belly button to belly button conversation about how do we make this better. So
are they touching?
No, they're
Are they
not
touching?
No, so we
I think that's called a
this
hug.
is I think this is in our Summit Fundamentals class, and it is where your belly button points. I'm terrified where y'all are going, so I'm just going to skip it. Where your belly button points is typically where your attention is, and if you pay attention, it's true. So if I'm in a conversation and I'm facing the person with my clothes on and my belly button facing.
With my clothes
There
on
it
and our
is.
belly buttons not touching.
Not touching.
Yeah, we're
Damn
not
it.
touching belly
How
buttons.
did it
We're
go
not,
there?
this isn't naval connection.
No, it's not.
Look,
No.
If I show up to a meeting and just my belly button exposed, Eric, you better be ready. You better be ready for some vulnerability.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
I only get
again,
vulnerable.
editing, Connor, editing. Okay.
I only get vulnerable when my navel is exposed.
The scissors are broken. It's all staying in.
Okay. Bastards. So
no, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You're good.
Where your torso is facing is typically where your intent is going. So if I'm having a conversation with you guys, but I'm facing this way, where the door to my office is, right? I'm really thinking about, I want to get out and walk out, and I'm just gonna, okay, yep, I'm doing that. Or if I'm facing my computer and somebody's sitting across from me and I'm not facing there, that was that was where I was going. So where the belly button points is typically where our attention is going. And it's a fun one to do, by the way, if you pay attention to it. But I'm saying that if I'm a manager, am I really having and listening? Did I say something else and I missed it?
No, I just literally, you said if you're paying attention to it, and I just pictured myself in a meeting going like, where's your belly button, dude? Like, hey, hold on.
But we have mentioned this before, where you like make time for these, and this is for, again, mid and top, like, because I, as a manager, have had people literally stop me in the hallway.
Oh my God.
And be like, hey, I mean, this is verbatim. Hey, what can I do to improve my leadership? I'm like, you better step off me right now, because there's so much going on. It's the middle of the day. I don't have time for this. Like,
great point.
And that, so if you're mid-level and you're like, how do I manage up? I need to have more conversations. Cool. Let me go stop. It is not going to go well. And that's not to say that they don't care, but you have to be intentional about when you're having these conversations. Give them a heads up, because if you also, where I've done this before, they're like, hey, can we sit down for a meeting? Yeah, for sure. I don't know what it's about. I sit down. They say, how can I improve my leadership? I'm going to tell them something, and it wasn't planned. And it wasn't the best. And I'll think about everything I should have said, 20 minutes later. So give a schedule, give a topic, let them know what's coming, so you can get real feedback.
I want that spliced in before all the things I said, because you're absolutely right. I mean, you're absolutely, it should be written down, the questions. I'd send an email first and go, hey, 100%. I'd really like to, here's the questions I'd like to go through. If you wouldn't mind, let's give it some time. Yeah. And there may be some value to doing it off site. Go to a coffee shop and sit down and talk. Easier to connect when we're out of work sometimes. But it's I actually think this can be a fun one if you want to make it fun. I know people are like, man, I'm in a rough situation, but
and it can really change the culture of leadership in your business, because if you just get rid of the bullshit of, I don't have time to develop my leaders, it is going to take time to develop the leaders you need in your business. But if you consistently say, I don't have time, I can't do it, I don't know how to do it, it's not going to happen. I'm talking about, it could be a 20-minute meeting to start. This is now coming from the top level, 20 minutes to do check-ins with your leaders. You could get 3 done in an hour, and they could be once a month. And that is going to change the way your leaders think, because now you're asking questions, you're stirring the pot, you're getting them to think critically.
I think what I'm hearing, right? So ultimately the goal is to engender and build trust when it comes to influencing us. It's building trust with the person that is leading you if you're in that spot. And I heard some things, and I just want to kind of put some value to them to say, hey, put some thought into how you bring these to life, because you can bring them to life 1,000 ways. But from what I'm hearing, these are what I'm hearing. Be teachable. Be curious as a listener and be a learner. Ask good questions. Seek out the information as a way to build vulnerability-based trust, but also to understand who you're working with and who you're working for, why it matters, all of those things. Curiosity and the commitment of being a learner is crucial. What I heard you say, Connor, which was really interesting, is you said, don't come find me in the middle of shift. I know you in that because that's what you prioritize. And I, as a person, as a mid-level manager, if I'm looking to influence those who are leading me, I have to value what they value and prioritize that. A lot of times I am different than Connor, and Connor is different than me. But if he is working to influence me and he doesn't interact with me personally at all, and he comes at me sideways and just goes, "You're wrong," I'm never going to be influenced by that. I'm just going to fire eventually.
Yeah.
But that's not how Connor, if you go back to the many moons ago of our relationship, like that's not how it happened. That's not how our relationship formed. And he influences me. I mean, we're not on that level anymore, but like even when I was leading him, he influenced me a ton because he valued what I value. He cared for what I cared for, and he showed me that consistently. And therefore I was willing and wanted to appropriate his feedback as well. The last one I'm interested in hearing is really this idea of creatively problem solving together, right? So being solution-minded versus problem-minded. We didn't say it directly, but we mentioned victimhood earlier. Eric, you mentioned like complaining, or I think Connor, you even said like control what you can control here. So with those three in mind, being a curious listener, being one who is solution-minded versus complaining, and then valuing what's important, where do you start? If you could give one piece to somebody who's listening that's in that boat, where do you start out of those three things? Which each one of those could have their own podcast, to be honest with you, but just thinking about it.
My gut reaction here is it depends on your personality. Like what is important to you as the mid-level manager, because I was about to jump in and be like, oh, well, be curious is the one that you need to do. But I'm a 5 on the Enneagram. I'm a high C on the disc. That is what I live for. So when I start a position, I'm always asking, I'm always curious about how we can improve things and how we can whatever. But for somebody else, their value may lie more in like what the other person values, which really comes into getting to know them relationally. So spending time with them inside of work, outside of work. So I would say, I don't know if it's a cut and dry answer for me. I would say, what do you value out of those three? Start with that one and incorporate the others in time.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. Eric, what's your thoughts on that?
Where would I start? It depends on, well, we've already started, meaning if you're out there listening, you're already in a situation. So your situation is going to dictate where you start. Do you have a good relationship with your manager? Do you have a bad relationship? If you have a bad relationship, you got to start on the relationship. If you have a good one, then we can say, and what do I mean by start on the relationship? Well, some basic, I don't know what level of questions you can go to, but I would ask, it's got to start with questions. It's got to start with creating awareness. It's got to go there. And then you got to be willing to hear whatever they say. You can completely disagree with it, but your job is not to get in an argument with your manager. That's not what you're doing. Your job is to go, hey, I'm looking for help. I'm looking to make this better. I'm looking for us to get better. I want to perform better. I want to go somewhere at this company. I'm that person, but right now I'm not feeling it. How do we get there? And somehow get to that conversation. And why I say somehow is because it depends on your situation. If it's a really bad one, you may have to have a mediator, as I was saying before. There's different things you can do. But once you have that conversation, to your point, Austin, you go and you're applying, there needs to be check-ins. And I would ask for it in that initial meeting. I go, I'd love it. Are you willing? Can we do a 15-minute meeting every 2 weeks? And just kind of check in on these 3 points. What, Connor? What?
It's funny because it has to, I keep thinking about the 100% responsibility on both sides. What you can't do as a mid-level manager is be, hey, can we have a 2-hour meeting every week? And can you come with 15 items of how I can improve as a leader?
Great. I'm glad you said that. No,
that's not. So by the way, just FYI, if that was what you were thinking, that's not valuing what's important to your leader, because I guarantee you that's not what's important to your leader at all. They're not going to show up consistently at all. And actually, it's
Prepared.
funny.
Yeah.
It's actually funny, Connor. I've had that happen. I've
Yeah, I
had
know.
team members and leaders that have worked with me, and they have said, "Hey, can you help me with this? I'm going to put some time on your calendar." And it was 6 2-hour blocks. I know.
And-
If we are in a spot where it's not awesome, and
Yeah.
we're working on something between you and I'm your direct report, I want some check-ins. Okay.
Yeah,
Not 2
yeah.
hours, not any of that
No, I
stuff.
think 15
Quick,
is a fantastic.
concise, a few things that we're working on. I'm getting feedback. I'm asking for the feedback so it's safe to give it. We know what the meeting's about. We're doing all that stuff. We're quick, we're in or out. And the cadence I'm not as concerned about, but that there is a cadence. It could be once a month. It could be once a quarter. I mean, it depends on what you guys are working on. But the reality is, if I've got direct reports, and I meet some of these people and they got like 25 direct reports, it gets real. If 25 direct reports walk in and say, I want 15 minutes of your time, you're screwed. You can't do it.
Yeah.
So you got to find a system that can work within that. But the reality is, I mean, the sweet spot to me is, I feel like the SEALs got it nailed down. It's 1 to 6. It's 1 manager to 6 direct reports.
Mhm.
And if you've got that type of scenario, we can get 15 minutes every couple of weeks to improve performance in a relationship. We can do that. But in that scenario, they're usually meeting weekly. They already
Yeah.
are.
Right.
Absolutely. The one, and I asked a question, and now I'm going to answer my own question. But as I heard you both talk about this, and I just want to highlight this. It goes back to what I value as a human. So, Connor, you said this earlier. It's what you value, your curiosity. For me, in my influencing others, as I've been sitting here, I'm thinking back on me leading up through different organizations. I've always started from the bottom and worked the way up through the ranks anywhere I was. And being solution-minded oftentimes gets forgotten. If you become known, and so it depends on what you're known
just finding
for.
problems.
But if you just are known as the person that every time I talk to them, they're like, listen, did you know this exists? Yeah, of course I do. I have eyes and I have ears and I see it every day. Thanks. You have time to fix it? Because I don't. And I used to have a leader that said, if you bring it to me, you better be ready to do it. And I love that approach. And I started taking that to heart. And a part of my journey is being that solution minded. Like if you can be a person that consistently finds solutions for issues, you will have no issue gaining trust with the person who's leading you and influencing well. Now, granted, you are also curious as a listener, curious as a leader. You're learning constantly. You value what's important to them, but be solution minded. Don't just wait to, or don't be the problem pointer. No one likes that person. Jeez.
Well, I love what you just said, and and my thought was, unless of course you do all that and then you intimidate the heck out of whoever you're reporting to because you're crushing it so well. I mean, that can happen too. That
just means you got to leave. And I think at some point, right? There's a book, and I just want to encourage. I'm not gonna. You'll get the point of what's in it. It's like when to know when to leave. It's out there. Go read it. If you're in a place where you're like, if I should, and I don't know where I'm at, I'm not encouraging you to leave. I'm encouraging you to seek that out, and there may be reason for that. And if you're not able to lead up well, and it gets to a point where you've done all of this stuff, and you're consistently doing all this stuff, and because of insecurity, lack of value proposition, misalignment, you can't get over that hump. And you've done mediation, you've done escalation, you've done all the things. It may be time. Now, that's only something you can answer within yourself.
Yeah.
Did you just say turn around?
No, he said
that's
time
the
to
song
set
you sing?
sail. I think he said.
Yeah.
I thought you were doing the turnaround song. I was like, that's a good one.
I really like how you said that because we've mentioned quit many times in this podcast alone. And I just want to highlight that's after you've done everything and you've really put the effort in and you're doing all these things. And then sometimes you think you're doing it and the reality is you're not very good at it or you're doing it poorly and you need to grow in it. So there's a whole lot of nuance before you get there, but you need to have the ability to stand and set barriers for what you need as well.
Yeah.
So.
And I would say too, always gain third party perspective. Literally do not get. So that means always get a third-party perspective, reach out, info@drivenleadership.com. If you need a third-party perspective, we'll read it. We'll give you insight. You may get featured on a future podcast.
Yeah, let's do it on a podcast. Send it in.
Yeah, and I mean because it's really helpful. When we talk about solving conflicts and resolving conflicts, it's always three stories. It's your story, their story, and a third-party story. Well, we can be a part of that story. So join us. Send us that email. We want to hear from you. We want to get your stuff there. And before we kind of end this leading up and influencing others, there's a lot of thought here. There's a lot of how that we didn't get to cover. But I truly believe that if you do those three things and start doing them and figuring out how those look nuancial in the current position where you are, you'll win. Last thoughts, Connor, Eric. Nuancial is a word, and if it's not a word, I just created the word, so you're welcome.
Dude, Webster is your friend. That's good.
That's a word.
It is 100% a word. How else would you say that?
How else? So my final thoughts are, we were talking earlier, and to me, having that conversation with the manager is a big deal. And people go, well, what do I say? What are the actual questions? And rather than run through all the questions, we hit some earlier. In today's world, use ChatGPT. Type it in and go, this is what I want to create with my manager. Here's their personality. Here's my personality. Give it all the information you can and go, what would be great questions to have in this? You're probably going to get some really good answers. Absolutely. And dive into it and help you prepare.
Yeah, that's a great practical tool there. That's great. Yeah. Connor, what's your thoughts? Last leaving thoughts to those looking to influence from below.
I would just say what I keep going back to is to look for opportunities. As I look back over my own journey, if I didn't take the opportunities that were given to me to lead up, then I would be on a much different path, or I would have learned things quite a bit slower. So I would just say look for the opportunities that you have, because if you have trust, if you don't have trust, if you have a good relationship, not a good relationship, there still will be some amount of opportunity. So look for it, seize it, do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look for it, seize it, do it. That's a perfect way to end this thing. Check us out. Shoot us an email. If you have any questions, stories, concerns, comments, we want to hear from you. You need a third-party perspective. Podcast@drivenleadership.com. Again, podcast@drivenleadership.com. If you hated today's episode because it was a different MC than normal, check us out next week because Connor will be back because I am going to get fired. And also, stay tuned. We have some really exciting things. EOS, Anchor Point. If you don't know what that is and you want to know, podcast@drivenleadership.com.
Anything else we want to tag at the end of this? This is like the longest outro ever.
I told you I'm getting fired today, baby.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Thanks.